Ever wondered how the 19th century shaped the United States as we know it today? As the calendar pages turned to 1800, America stood on the precipice of significant change. This was a time when the nation's political and social landscapes began to shift dramatically, laying the groundwork for the country we recognize today. One of the earliest and most significant milestones of this century was the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. This monumental land deal doubled the size of the nation, setting the stage for westward expansion and the manifest destiny. Just a decade later, the War of 1812 erupted, further defining America's identity on the global stage. This conflict, often referred to as the Second War of Independence, tested the resilience of the young nation and helped solidify its sovereignty. This century, brimming with promise and change, set the stage for a series of transformative events. Imagine a time when political differences seemed to vanish, the era of good feelings. This period, stretching from 1815 to 1825, was marked by a sense of national purpose and a desire for unity among Americans in the aftermath of the War of 1812. It was a time when the winds of change were gently blowing across the nation, bolstering the spirit of nationalism and stimulating economic growth. During this era, the American political landscape was dominated by a single party, the Democratic Republicans, which allowed for a brief respite from the usual partisan squabbles. Yet, it was also a time of significant events and decisions that would shape the future of the country. One such instance was the Missouri Compromise of 1820, a legislative measure that maintained the balance of power between slave and free states, a delicate equilibrium that would prove to be a temporary solution to a lasting issue. In a seemingly united nation, the seeds of discord were quietly sown. What if one man could embody the spirit of an entire age? Enter Andrew Jackson, 7th President of the United States, a figure who so defined his time that it was dubbed the Age of Jackson. This era saw the rise of the common man in politics, a shift from the elitist political landscape of the past. Jackson's presidency was marked by populist policies and an unshakable belief in the power of the people. But it was not without controversy. The Indian Removal Act, which led to the forcible displacement of thousands of Native Americans, remains a dark chapter in American history. Equally contentious was the nullification crisis, a standoff between the federal government and South Carolina over the state's refusal to enforce federal tariffs. This crisis tested the limits of state rights and federal power. Under Jackson's leadership, the Democratic Party was established, shaping the two-party system we know today. Jackson's era left an indelible mark on American politics and its people. What could be so divisive that it tears a nation apart? The mid-19th century in America was a time of escalating tensions, a period that would culminate in the Civil War, a conflict that would forever alter the course of the nation's history. The build-up to the Civil War was marked by a series of events that deepened divisions between the North and the South. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, for instance, stoked the fires of conflict by allowing these territories to decide whether to permit slavery, leading to violent clashes known as Bleeding Kansas. Then came the Dred Scott decision in 1857, where the Supreme Court declared that African Americans, enslaved or free, could not be American citizens and therefore could not sue in federal court. The decision further polarized the nation and fueled the abolitionist movement. The final spark came with the election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860. As an opponent of the expansion of slavery, his election was seen as a direct threat by Southern states, leading them to secede and form the Confederate States of America. The subsequent Civil War was a brutal and bloody conflict, with an estimated 600,000 casualties. Yet amidst this turmoil came a beacon of hope, the Emancipation Proclamation. Lincoln's bold move in 1862 declared that all enslaved people in Confederate-held territory were to be set free, marking a significant step towards the abolition of slavery. Following the Union's victory in 1865, the nation entered the Reconstruction era. This period was marked by efforts to reintegrate the Southern states and rebuild the nation. It was a time of significant political and social change, including the adoption of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which abolished slavery, granted citizenship to all born or naturalized in the United States, and protected every citizen's right to vote, respectively. A nation, once divided, embarked on a journey of healing and transformation. The Civil War era was a time of great strife, but it was also a period that redefined the ideals of freedom and equality in America. Could an era be both glittering and grimy at the same time? The Gilded Age, spanning the late 19th century, poses a paradox. This period was a time of sparkling progress and shadowy undertones, a time of transformation and turmoil. In the blink of an historical eye, America morphed from a largely agrarian society into an industrial powerhouse. Cities sprouted up and expanded at an unprecedented pace, their skylines punctuated by the smokestacks of factories and the steeples of churches. The hum of machinery became the nation's new anthem, and the clatter of horse-drawn carriages gave way to the whistles of locomotives and the clanking of streetcars. A wave of immigration swelled, adding a rich layer of cultural diversity to the American melting pot. People from across the globe, driven by dreams of prosperity, poured into the country. Yet the promise of the American dream was often met with harsh realities. Overcrowded tenements, poor working conditions, and rampant discrimination cast a long shadow over the gleaming promise of progress. The rise of big business was another hallmark of the Gilded Age. Titans of industry like Carnegie, Rockefeller, and Morgan built empires that reached into every corner of American life. But the greater the wealth accumulated at the top, the deeper the divide grew between the rich and the working class. Labor unrest became a recurrent theme, with strikes and protests often erupting in violent confrontations. And yet, amid the smoke and the strife, the Gilded Age was also a time of significant social progress. The push for women's suffrage gained momentum, echoing the growing demand for equality and social justice. Simultaneously, on the global stage, America flexed its muscles with the Spanish-American War, signaling its arrival as a new world power. Beneath the gilded surface, the foundations of modern America were being laid. The Gilded Age, with its glittering progress and its grim realities, was a pivotal chapter in the American narrative, setting the stage for the challenges and triumphs of the 20th century. So, what does the 19th century tell us about America? It tells us a story of change, struggle, and transformation. The dawn of a new century saw a young nation brimming with potential and ambition. The era of good feelings showcased a period of unity and national pride, paving the way for the Age of Jackson, a time characterized by democratic reform and expansion. However, the nation's progress was not without its trials. The Civil War era marked a pivotal point in American history, where the nation grappled with the question of slavery and the preservation of the Union. Emerging from this tumultuous period, the Gilded Age brought about unprecedented industrial growth, technological advancements, and the birth of modern capitalism. Each phase of this century, with its unique challenges and triumphs, contributed to the shaping of the nation. And so we find that, in the crucible of the 19th century, the America we know today began to take shape.